Hello viewers from wherever you're watching us from around the world. You're watching QTV, the Gambia's first private TV station, and we are broadcasting live from our studios here on Kairaba Avenue. My name is Aliou Sise, and it's now time for your weekly State of Affairs program, aired every Tuesday at 9 p.m. live here on QTV and repeated on Sunday at 10 a.m. Well, this week my guest is Professor Jibril Fall, who is the Director of GK Partners, the implementing agency of the Migration and Sustainable Development in the Gambia project. Well, Prof. Fall is a multidisciplinary practitioner with expertise in business, development, policy, and academia. He is also a seasoned international negotiator and diaspora development leader. Prof, good to have you on the program this week.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
As a start, could you just give us an overview of the MSDG project in the Gambia and its significance in the country's development strategy?
The MSDG project is a technical cooperation program. It is one of the first diaspora-led technical cooperation programs actually in the world. As we know, development institutions such as World Bank and sometimes even donor countries would have TA, technical assistance or technical cooperation programs in countries. So what we've done in Gambia is a diaspora-led intervention put at the same level as those other development agencies. The significance being that in most countries, Gambia clearly being one, the input of the diaspora to development far, far outweighs the amounts of money and other inputs that the development institutions around the world put into Gambia. So it started in 2017, just after the end of dictatorship and the beginning of the then coalition government.
And recently you held the 8th stake in the Nation Forum. I mean, how will you describe this year's forum?
This year was incredible for most of the people who attended. There were people there who attended the first one in January of 2018. And at SNF 6, 550 people attended. SNF 7 last year, 705 attended. This year we were bracing ourselves for about 1,000 people, and we had a full house, 1,200 people, with a significant contingent of university students. And we thought that new element of having the future leaders and professionals joining in this dialogue was an important one.
And I mean, the theme was, diaspora, jobs, and financing for development. I mean, what do you mean by this?
Financing for development is a term that's used globally in the field of international development. Every 10 years, the United Nations convenes and develops a framework for what it's called FFD, the Financing for Development. The last one was 10 years ago in Addis Ababa, and it's known as the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. So the next one would be in this year of 2025. It's hosted by Spain. It would be in Seville. And the diaspora's role in international development financing was reflected in the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, but not as much as we wanted. I was there in the negotiations, and we were frustrated. This time, there is significant input already happening, and we have the feeling that diaspora finance would feature more prominently as it deserves. And SNF 8, being diaspora, a major form of diaspora engagement, was dedicated to this road to Seville discussions, and that was actually in the presidential statement making that declaration. So this is almost like a kickoff to a series of diaspora activities leading to Seville in June, July of 2025, with the Gambia taking a lead for the African diaspora.
And looking at the team, like we said, diaspora jobs and financing for development. How could this create jobs?
Well, the diaspora contributes significantly to job creation. So we know that the informal economy in the Gambia is the biggest employer. And many of those people involved in the informal economy are involved in small trading that often needs small capital, and a significant part of that is coming from diaspora. Studies have shown that the remittances we talk about, anything between 8 to 12% actually goes to SME or micro investments. So that job creation through self-employment is an important one. But we have also seen diaspora entrepreneurs come in and create jobs, create businesses that have created the jobs we need in this country. The MSDG project itself ran what is called the Diaspora Development Fund, and we provided grants to a whole number of diaspora practitioners. When we did the monitoring and the review, the number of verified jobs for the period 2022 to 24 was 576. That was the numbers we could confirm. The numbers reported are significantly more than that, more than double. So every way you look at it, given the significance of contribution to the economy, it's leading to jobs. And we think policy and practice and frameworks can make that even better and enhance the job creation element of diaspora investment.
So what challenges did you face in achieving this milestone?
You mean the SNF as an event or job creation?
Job creation.
Job creation is the most difficult thing.
I mean, you're talking about over 500 jobs?
Yes, so for that,
2017 to 2024?
We work, the positive part is through partnerships. Okay. So often look for change makers or potential change makers and support them. So the support is significant in that what we put in, if we didn't put it, the jobs won't happen. But it does not mean that what we put in by itself would have created the jobs. So it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle. So you are finding the piece that would give you the whole. The challenges of job creation is the most tremendous one. It's not only in Gambia, in almost every part of the world, job creation is difficult because the businesses need to earn enough surpluses to maintain those jobs. So there need to be creativity. So the element of self-employment, the use of technology, innovation, and creation of new services is an important approach to dealing with this big target. As you may know, the current National Development Plan has a target that I think it's up to 2027, 150,000 jobs would be created. That's a big task.
And do you think this is achievable?
I'm not sure, but most targets end up not being achieved. That does not necessarily mean failure. One has to be ambitious to put a big target so that even if you fall short, you would have achieved significant sort of progress. And creating even one job is very important because on average, a Gambian income earner supports between 5 to 8, 9 people. So when you've created a job for one person, you are impacting several.
And just, I mean, I understand since 2017 to 2024, you have implemented over 100 activities, 192 activities since the inception. Could you just highlight some of the most impactful ones?
Well, I would say it's difficult to choose from that number of interventions. But there's categories to it. There's the ones that are institutional, that helps create the environment for better action. And for that, I can name at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs the creation of the Gambia Diaspora and Migration Directorate, whereby for the first time, seriously, the Gambians have a port of call within government. So we go there if we have problems and they can help us. Sometimes they can't help us, but we know where to go. There needs to be more awareness raising about that institution. Second, maybe, is the one that almost everybody knows about. That is the work we've done with Central Bank on remittance data monitoring, analysis, and publication. Gambia now is amongst the top in the world in terms of how quickly they are able to publish remittance data.
So is that why Central Bank was awarded by the United Nations?
Absolutely. That was in 2023. When we did the first Stake in the Nation Forum in 2018, we were not ready, together with the Central Bank, for the data for 2017 to be published. 1 year down the road, there was significant work that at the second Stake in the Nation Forum, that's when we started the tradition where the governor stood up and said, the year that just ended, less than a fortnight ago, here's the data. And in the beginning, we were cautious. We'll say this is interim numbers, and then we verify. But in the past few years, the difference between the number that the governor of the central bank announces at the State of the Nation, and the verified figure tends to be around 1%. Yeah. So they have become very, very good at that. And maybe I should also mention the National Assembly TV in terms of the institutional change. Yeah. Even your guys here, QTV, I think they've reduced the number of trips they take to the National Assembly because there is a full studio, remotely controlled. They send you clean feed and you can put your logos on it. And there was debate as to should we insist on the National Assembly logo and MSDG logo being there. To me, I said, no, the most important thing to give it out because the diaspora need to access this. And now think about it. Every formal proceeding of the National Assembly is recorded, live streamed, and archived.
Okay. And I mean, earlier on, I mean, you mentioned the issue of the diaspora. I mean, how much they contribute to, to the development of the country. In 2023, I mean, we saw $737 million US. I mean, equivalent to over $45 billion is just last year, 2024. I mean, we're saying $775 million US. I mean, what role have you actually played in ensuring the remittances are being able to, I mean, or the central bank is able to record this? What were some of the strategies that you used? Because as you said, it wasn't in place, you know, a couple of years ago.
The monitoring is data is based on the balance of payments manual frameworks. Okay. Myself, out of interest, many years ago, because this movement of what we're doing in Gambia is part of the movement of diaspora development, which started about 30 years ago. And I have the good fortune to have been part of those developments that influence the international policy framework and international institutions to recognize the role of diaspora. Incidentally, this year's SNF, we had a special guest speaker in the person of Chuku Emeka Chikezi, who is one of the co-founders of AFFORD and recognized as one of the organizations that changed effectively the paradigm of international development with the recognition of the role of the diaspora. So you have what the IMF says of how do you count this. But we find in many countries, not only Gambia, that the methodology at home was not as sound. So we did thorough analysis of what was the state of play in terms of data monitoring, what were the weaknesses, what were the best practices, and we worked with the central bank team. In some of we did technical roundtables. I think in all it was about 8 over a period of 3 years. And in some of the instances we had the remittance team from the World Bank would join online on the calls. And through, of course, the cooperation of the bank and the investment they also put in it, the transformation had happened.
I mean, we know over 10% of our population live in the diaspora. What is the diaspora?
Every migrant, every migrant is a diaspora, but not every diaspora is a migrant.
What's the difference?
The difference is a diaspora, it's the origins of the word is scattered people. So you live somewhere, but you identify culture, identity, roots at another place. So people who are born of Gambian parents abroad may be born and brought up in Spain and have never left Spain, but they are part of the Gambian diaspora, but they are not migrants. They don't even have an air ticket or a passport.
Gambian passport,
yeah. But every migrant, because they've left their country, are part of that diaspora. And IOM gives us a definition, the International Organization for Migration. It says a migrant is someone who's left their country of birth and live in another place for a period of 1 year and a day. So technically you're a migrant. So when people go on studies, if it's longer than 1 year, the data start capturing them as migrants.
So, I mean, how do you mobilize the diaspora community?
There are different ways, because to begin with, the diaspora mobilize themselves. So almost every diaspora, even the formation of diaspora communities is through mobilization. You see clusters of Gambians even in the diaspora, because it would have been 1 or 2 people who went to one area and they brought their friends and family. So that's mobilization. What has happened in the past 30 years or 40 years is this strong connection to home. partly due to the improvements in technology and communication, partly due to the fact that now it is a viable choice to go away and stay away and still contribute significantly. If you go 40 years ago or even 30 years ago, most Gambians who go abroad and study have a strong intention to come back home. Sometimes a job is waiting for them. The world is not like that anymore. But you can live and work anywhere. Talent competes, and you have Gambians who are very talented. Let's take one example. Gambian footballers is the best example of showing talent in its raw form. They can be anywhere and work anywhere, but that does not mean that they don't contribute. So it's that movement that happened, and then the work of Afford and others to develop concepts and frameworks around it that have changed the paradigm of development and the sense of identity. So we used to say in England, it's the here and there. And an important element, I am Gambian, I was born and brought up here. I've lived all my adult life in the United Kingdom. I am British. But that is not a subtraction. It is a plus. So when you go and acquire something, you have not become less Gambian. It's not a subtraction. It's a plus.
And with all this, like, I mean, over 200,000 Gambians living outside of the country, do we have a diaspora policy as a country?
And the Gambia has a diaspora policy, which in my view is beautiful in its simplicity.
Okay.
Now, policy, people go to school, universities to study policy analysis. I'd written manuals on policy. And I have a view that it should be simple and straightforward. And in Gambia, the first diaspora policy was a presidential statement, an executive presidential statement delivered on the 23rd of September in 2017. Remember those days. This is in the first year of the new Gambia. And this is President Barrow's first trip to the General Assembly in New York. And he then went to a town hall meeting in New York, again organized by Gambian diaspora. And there he announced, he said, this is the policy for diaspora. That's when he said the Gambia is the 8th region. That the diaspora is the 8th region. That there would be a diaspora directorate, that stake in the nation will happen, and broadly speaking, the framework. After the policy, then you begin to take that and start turning it into reality. So Gambia also in 2018 had its first Gambia diaspora strategy, and it is now having a second one run by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
But in terms of implementation,
yes,
is it being implemented?
Parts of it. So the evaluation of the first diaspora strategy, GK Partners hired an independent consultant, and very honest, straightforward, and it shows what's been achieved and what's not been achieved. If you take, for example, improvement of the remittance environment, you would say that's a major achievement. If you take the biggest area of failure or non-implementation is diaspora voting. That's the biggest one. But in between, there are some where there's major success, and there are some where there isn't much success. But it's all work in progress. If you have a plan that you get 100% of it, 100% score, the plan was no good to begin with.
And I mean, can you give us an example of another country with such a diaspora policy?
Very many countries in the world have diaspora policies and strategies, some going back many years. Again, you look at countries in size. I did the diaspora strategy of another small country in Eastern Europe called Moldova. Moldova is surrounded by Ukraine and Romania on one side. So by 2013-14, we were working on their diaspora policy and strategy, 10-year one they've been implemented. You have several countries at different stages have created diaspora policies or strategies. In fact, the IOM had a program, and UNDP and others supporting several countries having that. But remember, and I keep emphasizing this, the policy can be brilliant, but the action matters.
Exactly.
And where we are now, we also have international. For the first time ever in 2018, we have an international migration policy framework convened by the UN. and it's called the Global Compact on Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. So if you are a country, you don't have a policy, I would say instead of spending years trying to develop one, pick that and domesticate it, and then start doing the work rather than spending years on developing a nice document.
And you know, in most cases, it's one thing to develop such policies and strategies, but it's another thing to have the actual people being involved in the development of these policies.
Yes.
How much was the diaspora involved in the development of this policy?
The first one, significant, because remember, all of this is coming out of what used to be called the struggle against dictatorship. So you had significant levels of diaspora engagement at that time. And that was a bad period in that all of the efforts were sort of negative energy. You were fighting for something. So when the change happened, there was a series of formal consultations. And I'll give you examples of some of the things that were firsts, and now they've become normal. In 2017, I think it was around August, when the consultation started, to get a minister of state or a senior civil servant to be on a platform being interrogated by diaspora was something, a big deal. Because before that, there was no tradition of government officials or government ministers interacting with the diaspora who were considered to be troublemakers or difficult. And there were one or two ministers who were prepared to go, and this was online. And again, trying this online basis, we did a series, and you had to choose the time on a weekend so that it's not too late or too early, depending whether you are in the West Coast of America or you are in the Middle East. So you had those formal consultations. They are recorded in the document as to what happened. It even included surveys that was done and in-person interviews of key informants. Because the diaspora also organizes itself in communities and actors and community leaders. So those are key informants in these processes.
You are aware when you look at politics and diaspora. Is there any correlation between home politics and diaspora?
Yes, I would say. Okay. And the more correlation is the diaspora are also political animals, okay, like any other Gambian. Okay. So everything you observe in Gambia, you can easily observe it in the diaspora, and it's not remarkable at all. Now, there's a big difference in diaspora development and politics. I used to say, and I advise that to countries, not particularly Gambia, but other countries who had a rather sort of difficult relationship with their diaspora. And I used to tell them, and I said, your diaspora may hate the government, but they love the country. And what you find in diaspora development is those people who are contributing to build community centers or to provide scholarships or to do solar lights in the streets. Those people would do it day in, day out, irrespective of any political or party political connections at all. And as we observe in Gambia, the majority of diaspora on politics, they are silent. Nobody knows their view.
Interesting.
Yes.
And do you find that surprising?
No. The majority is often silent. That's why sometimes elections are traumatic in the results they create. People who are political activists by nature have to make more noise. But the ordinary voter who have a single vote, most of the people, you don't know their views. By the way, as a diasporan, I don't have a vote. But in Gambia, most of the people...
I'm saving that for the final minutes of this interview, because it's quite important, diaspora voting.
Yes.
But what else must be listening that you think other countries can learn from this MSDG?
From Gambia?
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you that the institutionalization that the Gambia government has made, at least for the MSDG project, is one of the things observers are saying it's worth emulating. The United Nations, through the UN Network for Migration, had done a review, and the MSDG is considered good practice and is published as such. Recently, the World Economic Forum also did a piece on this because you have access. And I'm telling you honestly, we don't ask much of the government, but most of what we ask, we get.
And as we speak, it is ongoing as we speak in Switzerland, the World Economic Forum.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, let's now, I mean, look at your next move. I mean, the issue of diaspora voting.
Yes.
Do you think this is realistic?
I don't understand the question.
Do you think it is achievable, diaspora voting?
Why shouldn't it be achievable? It's just a vote.
Well, it's just a vote, but I mean, one will ask this question. In your own view,
yes,
do you think it is achievable? It's not in place as we speak. You can't vote if you're in England.
Yes.
Unless if you travel to the country.
So I'm waiting for this historic injustice to be corrected.
Why is
there
it
is
injustice?
There is no logistical, constitutional, legal reason why the diaspora should not have voted even at the last elections. But what has happened has happened. Now we have another round of elections about to come. And everybody needs to do everything to make sure that that happens. Us as a project, MSDG, worked very, very closely with IEC. Okay. You know, the IEC was on record on saying not only that they're able to do it, but they announced dates in 2020 as to the dates in 2021 they would register the diaspora. Okay. So if you look at all of the logistics, it's possible. Take Senegal. Their electorate, the voter registration is what, 7.4 million. Yeah. About 5% of that, 340,000, are diaspora. And they are based in 51 countries. At the last elections, it was in November, there were 809 polling stations in 51 countries, including several here in Gambia. And they've been doing it for years. So I don't even want to get myself involved in the debate as to whether it's logistically possible or not.
Do you find it contradictory that despite acknowledging the diaspora as a key player in our socio-economic development,
yes,
yet you can vote?
Yes, it is. So it's a glaring gap, and it's not to be filled. In one of the SNFs we did, we called it the unfinished business. Okay. So hopefully within months, 12 months, this matter would be settled.
But do you think there's a political will? I remember in one of your forums that you held at Mercy, where you had the National Assembly members.
Yes.
The Attorney General was on record to say, I mean, he couldn't at the time assure that, diaspora will vote in this upcoming electoral cycle, but the commitment from government was there.
I'm not sure whether that's what he said.
That's what he said. I was there.
Okay. And because the commitment, based on what the presidents have said, and over time, is that just after the last elections, the president said that every public institution must redouble efforts to make sure that diaspora voting is a reality. I don't remember that specific interview you mentioned with the Minister of Justice.
Not interview, but per se his intervention, because he was asked to give an assurance that the diaspora will be voting in the next election.
Yes.
And his response was, at the time, he couldn't give a concrete assurance that the diaspora will vote. Yeah. But he knows that, he knew that the government was really committed, yes, to the diaspora voting.
And what we also heard from him is that the things that needs to be done from his side, the Ministry of Justice, that he would do it.
And that has to do with the election bill. Are you impressed with the progress being made so far?
Oh, it's now, there's been no movement of the election bill for several months.
Okay.
Yeah? But that still has nothing to do with the diaspora voting. Remember, the right for the diaspora to vote, the right for the diaspora to vote have existed since 1997. So it's not new. So the law as it is today, as it was 1997, allowed for diaspora voting. So you are talking of, that's why it's an historic injustice. These are not new rights that are being introduced.
Exactly. The Constitution guarantees that every citizen of the Gambia of 18 years or older and of sound mind the right to vote for the purpose of elections of a president and member of National Assembly, and shall be entitled to be registered as a voter in a National Assembly constituency for that purpose. In this case, however, the diaspora is yet to be demarcated as a constituent, meaning you must come back home to vote. Yes, you have the right to vote as a Gambian, but you must come back home.
Yes. So
meaning you must demarcate the diaspora as a constituent.
Absolutely.
That is not in place as we speak.
Absolutely. This is a very important point because one of the, in my view, excuses rather than a credible reason why the vote didn't happen at the last round of elections was this idea of demarcation. And the reason many of us were not impressed with that argument was that I am from Latrikunda. I live in England. I can be registered in the constituency that's already demarcated. So if you wanted to do it, you can do it that way. But this is one of the things that we think needs to be done to avoid doubt and create simplicity. That is the demarcation. And there's an additional positive reason, not just only to sort out potential confusion. That is the demarcation is now the Gambia, having recognized the historic injustice to the diaspora about not voting, recognizing the role of the diaspora in development, recognizing that extending the legitimate franchise increases people's participation. The proposal is that it demarcates 5 diaspora constituencies. Senegal took the lead on this. So you have diaspora constituencies, meaning the Gambia diaspora elect diaspora members of parliament representing different parts of the world. And the proposed demarcation is for 5 in Africa based on the numbers of where the Gambians are. If you take Senegal, of their National Assembly of 165 National Assembly members, 15 are for diaspora based on the numbers. In Gambia, the proposal is it would be 5. And for demarcation, it's IEC to do it, supported by Ministry of Justice.
But is it about logistics or it's about the political will? These are 2 different things.
Yes. So
one might say because of logistics, you know, we might need a lot of money to have this. Do you agree?
Oh, the money, the earliest discussions of this, I remember with the IEC, we said, how much money are you talking about? Money is not an issue. It's not that expensive to do.
Oh, really? How do you know?
We've done the calculation.
How much are we talking about?
Well, at the time, and I'm not sure whether you would quote me on this. No, the audience would quote me on this.
Well,
but at the time, I threw a figure, and of course later we nailed it down. This is, I'm talking of 2018. And I say at the top end, you're talking of $5 million. $5 million, and one can find it. Okay. Leading to the 2021 election, the Ministry of Finance went back and voted extra money for the potential of diaspora voting. But I'll tell you why this is a red herring. It's irrelevant. The right must not be subjected to, am I able to pay this or not? This is such a backward tactic that the colonialists used to use. People had forgotten, in this very country, what's happening to the diaspora used to happen to anybody who lived beyond Birkama. It was considered the protectorate. So those who live in the colony, the capital, and the suburban area around the capital are given the vote. And those who live in the rural area are not, because, oh, it's very difficult to do elections in the rural area. They're not educated. They don't know how to vote. All manner of stuff. That's one thing. The second thing is it's dangerous to link a right like a political right to money. There are many Gambians who would born, live a long life, and die, who would have never paid a single butut of tax to the government, because maybe they were poor or never earned. Are you going to take away the right of vote for them? No. So me as a member of diaspora sending thousands of pounds to Gambia, it's irrelevant. It has nothing to do. My only qualification is I'm Gambian, and that's enough. Nothing more. The financial argument is a red herring. And I think everybody knows that.
And how about with it, Parliament? Parliament is going to is responsible for making these laws. And perhaps you belong to, just giving an example, I mean you align with the government and you realize that, hey, our support base in the diaspora is not that good. So allowing them to vote could mean that they might vote us out. Could this be a reason as well? I'm just giving an example.
I'm not in that position, but in terms of speculation, it's not a bad speculation,
okay,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is this. That also applies to every part of the Gambia. So there are parts you would say, oh, this part of Gambia, I don't think they like me. So what are you going to do? Try to deny them the right to vote? It's outrageous. So what you do is what we do in democracies. You campaign, you go in, you engage. That's how it's done. And again, I remind you, who knows? There's been no scientific poll to try to figure out how the diaspora would vote, which parties they would vote for. Nobody knows. And the majority of the diaspora are apolitical. They don't belong to political parties. They don't give their views. We don't know who they will vote for.
But maybe they are the silent majority.
Exactly. And the silent majority, if you're politicians, you go charm them. That's how democracy works.
But in this case, how are you going to coordinate diaspora voting? I mean, early on I asked you, what is the diaspora? And you said it's anyone who travel out of the country and live in a particular host country for over a year and all those things. So meaning even someone who is in Senegal is in the diaspora. So how are you going to coordinate this thing to ensure they're all able to vote?
Yeah, you do it how it's been done by many other countries for decades and decades. It's well known. And you can ask that question, how do you coordinate elections anywhere? These are well-tried and studied things. And every year it improves. Even elections in Gambia and the running of elections have improved. Go 40 years ago, there were few polling stations. In the day, there would be long queues. Some may not even vote, or you fear that you would be in the queue a long time. Part of the improvements is to increase the polling stations and all of that. As a methodology, it is well developed and known. As I said, Senegal just last year had 2 elections, didn't they? Yeah. And Guinea, you see Guineans vote in Gambia for many, many years. So you can see my hesitancy as to getting into these pseudo debates as to why it can't happen. We're talking about the rights of the people. If there's any doubt, the focus should be how do I make it happen? Having discussions of why it cannot happen is not a discussion for me. You see what I mean? Yeah. It's like people denying my right and getting me to engage why they really should continue denying the right. You see what I mean? Yeah. It's just a non-starter. So we're just waiting for all of the stars to line up, as it were, and we're hoping that will be in 2025. We believe what our bosses tell us, the people who run this country, from the IEC, from the Ministry of Justice, they tell us this would happen, and it didn't happen before. We believe them, and we give all of the support. MSDG is a technical sort of support, and we're not even the best or the biggest. There are many international, well-reputed elections experts, from IFES to IDEA International, people who do this day in, day out. So in the event the diaspora is not able to vote in the next electoral cycle, what will happen next? I have no idea. I personally, because I'm personally affected, I don't even want to imagine it. But why do you think, for example, I mean, you're citing Senegal as an example where they have the diaspora represented in National Assembly. In the case of the Gambia, why do you think the diaspora should be represented in Parliament? Why shouldn't they? Where do you live? I live in the Gambia. Which constituency? I'm from Jara East. You have a member of Parliament? Yeah. Why do you have a member of Parliament? Well, to represent me in Parliament. So it's a non-debate. I'm Gambian. But maybe someone watching will be saying, but why do the diaspora need a rep in Parliament? It's for you now to justify and say, these are the reasons why we want to be represented in Parliament. No. No, I'm Gambian. Don't you see?
Yeah, Gambian, but you're from Latrikunda.
Yes.
And don't you have a rep from Latrikunda's constituency?
I don't live in Latrikunda. I don't live in Latrikunda, and the fact that I don't live in Latrikunda, the law in Gambia does not say that if you don't live in Latrikunda, you stop being Gambian.
Okay.
You see my point?
Yeah.
So the law doesn't, as long as you remain Gambian, you have that right. It's a settled matter on the Constitution.
Okay.
And if you are asking the philosophical point as to why is it good for people who live abroad for their rights still to remain, it's because they still engage with their country. There are many people in the diaspora whose contribution to the development of welfare, peace, stability in Gambia is more than many other Gambians who live here. In fact, in one of the Stake in the Nation forums, we did an analysis of the productivity of the diaspora. You take what, maximum 10% of the population is in the diaspora, and their contribution, at least the one that we measure scientifically, that is the remittances, is anything up to over 30% equivalent. So that's high in terms of, so if you take productivity, that means they are 3 times more productive, and they're your brother and your sister. Why would you, because your sister lives abroad, why would you then want to deny them their rights? So if there's anybody who have these feelings that the diaspora is alien, just remind yourself who they are.
Or there's that fear because of political gains. You feel not comfortable, not secure having the diaspora.
Well, but that's
all those things could be factors as far as the delay of these. Things are concerned.
I'm saying that is not idle speculation. There's merit in that speculation. But I am saying all of that should be irrelevant because there are certain things that are fundamental. Get the rights, and then remember this right that people have, you're just competing for votes. It's the same thing in Gambia. You compete for votes, you win some, you lose some.
And what will you look at and said, I wish, aside from the diaspora voting, that I wish government could do this thing for the diaspora?
Well, there's certain things that are in the pipeline, and I think it's happening. For example, we've been working with Ministry of Finance, Central Bank, on diaspora bonds. You see, we talk of remittances, isn't it? That one is money going to family and friends. There are also other forms of diaspora finances, philanthropy, which is going to people that we don't know. But many Gambians in the diaspora are also holding hundreds of millions of dollars in their bank accounts abroad. So it would be great, and this is not only for Gambia, I've done work and framework for this for all of Africa, whereby you create financial structures, investment structures that would start attracting diaspora savings. So the bits that we haven't remitted. And what's the big benefit for that in Gambia? When you bring that, you are bringing hard currency. You are increasing what's called the multiplier effect here in Gambia, and very many returns. The Gambia government talks of resource mobilization, local resource mobilization, and the IMF encourages them to do that. Right now, the diaspora virtually plays no role in that. Whereas if you create these bonds, they can be local currency bonds. You begin to attract these additional resources. And as Chukwu Emeka Chikeze was reminding us, we are now in the world where the so-called donor countries, day by day, are reducing the little they used to give us. And it's likely to be less and less. So we have to do it through self-support. And the biggest form of self-support is the diaspora.
Quite interesting. I would just like to know from you, in terms of the financial planning app.
Yes.
How do you think this is going to help in improving financial literacy among Gambians?
So we're not yet at the app, but I'm excited by this. So there is a national financial inclusion strategy in Gambia, and I think it's under the control of the central bank. And part of that element, and everybody would agree with this, that financial planning and literacy should start very early with children at school. or at least at secondary school. So what we did with the MSDG project was to work on that and develop. We did research as to what are the key elements regarding financial literacy. If you live and work in Gambia, what are the things about finances and financial management? We did that, and we, instead of it being like a course of training, we developed it in a form of a questionnaire. So everything comes to you as a question. So then there's a series of answers, including answers that are wrong. So the next stage of that, and that's been implemented, I think over 5,000 or 7,000 school children have already gone through that in all regions of the country. So we're hoping that this phase of the project will go one step further, whereby you put the questions and the answers in an app and just make it available. So people can self-teach themselves. You can use the app, and you can make it interesting by giving rewards or putting ridiculous answers amongst the good ones, as it were, to make it fun.
And what support have you been given to the immigration department as well in terms of, I mean, passport issuance to the community in the diaspora? I mean, this has always been an issue. Yes. Gambians living outside always complain about the issue of passport. Yes.
So in the past few years, I would say 3-4 years, very little as far as MSDG is concerned. We had major engagement with the Gambia Immigration Department from 2017 to say around 2019. But this one have resurfaced as a big issue. And you have occasional periods of real crisis when Gambians in the diaspora, sometimes their passport is expired, or they are in the process of being regularized or given status, and they need a valid passport, and it's difficult to have. The one sure way to sort all of this, especially we are in the age of biometric passports, where your biometric data would have to be taken, is to do what other countries do. That is, GID should have capacity to operate a mobile roving registration system. Some countries, what they do is they would announce that this month of January we would be in these countries, in these cities. And the community would be aware, it would be publicized, all of the fees involved are published, and people, instead of worrying for months, they would travel 200 miles even to where they live to come, join the queue, give their data, and the rest would be processed, of course, through the post. And instead of having to call a family member back home to be going back and forth, yes, and get you that readable machine. Exactly, and there's a limit to that. As you know, there are now some countries that will not even accept just the machine-readable passport. They ask and insist on the full biometric, and that's the future. There's international agreements within ICAO that's the passports that every country must use. We are because of our culture. How do you help in preserving our Gambian culture? That has been a very important part of even the work we do with the diaspora, because both in terms of language and in terms of, when you say culture, especially the good things, sometimes culture need not be good, it's just nice. And that also is important. So amongst the first things we did was to ask musicians and artists, both in the diaspora here, to research about lullabies. Lullabies are, of course, the songs that usually mothers and siblings would sing to children. And the sentiments of that, but it encourages the use of language, myths, and storytelling. And MSDG, working with Yaram Arts, had already not only commissioned that, but we got diaspora artists to record a series of them, both Mandinka and Wolof lullabies. But the research have also documented lullabies in, I think, 5 to 6 different languages. We've taken that one step further. For the first time ever, those lullabies were scored as music pieces. They are written in notation. So we have the workbooks. And Yaram Arts have done this, whereby it takes this to a school. Maybe there's only 1 or 2 Gambians there, but it's a sheet music. Anybody who can read music can play it. And suddenly, you go to a school, everybody's playing the sheet music of a piece from your country. And the young Gambians who sometimes are shy to speak their local language are suddenly so proud because everybody, not only them. The reason why children in the diaspora sometimes are shy about the culture is because they don't want to be different. So as long as everybody says, yes, we love this, then it becomes easy and simple.
And we're running out of time, but I mean, what's your long-term vision, for this project?
Well, the long-term vision is for it to be redundant. But any form of development, I keep saying, is the business of failure. The very reason we're doing this, because there are things not working. So one is hoping that as little intervention is needed in time. I'll give you an example of the work we do with Central Bank. After an intensive period of the first 2 years, there isn't much work we do. And we find that right now, the Directorate at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in the beginning, the sort of support we had to do, it's no longer needed. So all of these development issues, the aim, long-term aim, is to do as little as possible because the old problems have been solved or we've found ways of dealing with them.
And just finally, Prof, before we leave, your final message to the government and Gambians both in the country and diaspora.
It's a huge, to start with, it's a huge thank you for what we perhaps sometimes take for granted. The fact that you have a diaspora-led project embraced and supported by the country is a tremendous thing, and we are most grateful. And we keep saying one of the accusations against the diaspora is that they're impatient for things. It is partly true, but they are impatient, as I put it, for development. So sometimes that impatience, just see it as that eagerness. And of course, the one area that everybody is waiting for that gap to be filled is the diaspora voting.
Thank you so much, Professor Gabriel Fall, who is the Director of GK Partners, the implementing agency of the Migration and Sustainable Development in the Gambia project. He was my guest this week. Thank you so much, Prof, for coming on the program, and we wish you all the best. I hope and pray that the diaspora will vote in the next electoral cycle. Well, viewers, with that, we bring an end to this week's edition of your weekly State of Affairs program. Do join us next Tuesday at 9 p.m. same time. Until then, bye-bye from me and the entire production team.